Good evening, Veterans Council Veterans fans and LinkedIn as well and Instagram. So I think some of you guys know that one of the things the Veterans Council Veterans doing, and from September 15th to October 15th is actually Hispanic Heritage Month. And what we decided to do in Veterans Council Veterans, we want to sit down and honor those veterans, Hispanic veterans, and who are related to mental health, and by interviewing them, bringing them on, provide some information we don't know about, and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And tonight we got a really special guest. One thing I do want to highlight is, as I said before, that Hispanic Heritage Month starts September 15th to October 15th. It was 1 week when Lyndon Johnson had it back in '68, and then Ronald Reagan came in and made it to 31 days. There was some little discussion about, using the term of Hispanic, Latinx, whatever. Those are discussions for what we're going to call this month. And I thought it was important that we talk about this. The Hispanic, as far as the Hispanic and what it all entails, over 15% of veterans are Hispanic. And then 7.6% of them who are officers are Hispanic, and about 2.7% of them are flag officers or general officers. And so it should be a lot of discussion about Hispanics when it comes to Hispanic veterans, especially when it comes to Hispanic Heritage Month. So what I want to bring on to you, I think is exciting that we bring her on. And before I bring her on, I want to give a little bit of snapshot of what she's all about, and then we'll go from there.
Former service members and others met at Civic Plaza in honor of Vanessa Guillen.
I want to say a heartfelt thank you to every one of you here today, fighting for justice for Specialist Vanessa Guillen.
This rally was held in support of the Army specialist who was murdered by a fellow soldier at Fort Hood back in April. Organizers are calling for change to the military in the form of a congressional resolution. If passed, the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act, or House Resolution 8270, would allow service members to report sexual harassment to an agency outside the chain of command. Proponents say the bill is key in preventing similar tragedies from happening again.
You can't report a problem to the problem, because oftentimes the chain of command is the problem. And my question is, how many soldiers or how many service members do we have to lose before we realize that command cannot investigate themselves?
The rally was held by the veteran-led Our Sisters Keeper movement.
So we just got finished. That person you saw there, Crystal Romero, is our special guest. But before we can go to that, we still have to go to intro. Welcome for this nice special edition that we wanted to bring to you, because this person here is so busy, and I'm so glad I got a chance to get an opportunity to talk to her. I mean, we can probably go on for hours. This soldier has been doing so much, taking care of the soldiers and the veterans as a continued mission. Her name is Master Sergeant retired Crystal Romero, and Crystal has been in at least active duty for 13 years, and then finished the rest of it up in a National Guard, reserve time. She's also done as part of the Homeland Security, but mainly Crystal's really been out there in the trenches when it comes to military sexual trauma. As you mentioned, you saw earlier on that news clip, she's been like a staunch supporter when it comes to Vanessa Guillen and what happened to her, unfortunate tragedy of her dying in Fort Hood. So I thought it'd be important to bring you guys on, talk about some things. It's going to be complex. Sit down, get your pencil ready, because you're going to learn a lot from this lady. I'm excited to have her on, and now, to no further ado, I want to introduce Master Sergeant retired Crystal Romero. How you doing, Crystal?
Good evening. How are you? And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I know you already told me you already had like 7 interviews, so I won't be disappointed if you call me another name or something. I know you like your mind as much, but I just want to grab. So I'm just glad that you're here. So let's start off with, I want to humanize you. I know in your bio you said you had 3 daughters, but let's start from Crystal. Why you joined the military, and then go from there. Let's just talk about that a little bit.
All right, that's awesome. That's my favorite part about why I joined the military, or how. So yes, I do have 3 daughters. My oldest is in college, and I have 13-year-old twins that are in 8th grade. So all girls. So if anybody can tolerate a lot of things, that would be me, because I've got 3 teenagers. But how I came to join the military is actually part of my Hispanic heritage, because and it also ties into the work that I do and ties into my passion as to why I do it. So I'll start with, I was born to a single mom. My mother was 14 when she had me. She became pregnant in high school. Not something she was planning, obviously. So I'll just point out the big elephant. And I'm a product of rape, I guess you could say. I mean, there's really no easy way to say it. So in high school, my mom's high school principal, his name was Jose G. Lucero. He was a soldier, and he served during the Bataan Death March. He's a Bataan Death March survivor. And he took my mom under him, and his wife, Stella, took my mom under their wing and helped her graduate high school, and actually helped her get into college. And they helped my mom raise me. And my padrino, because he later became my godfather, he would always tell me that I was born to be a soldier, because I was born on March 4th, and soldiers always march forward. So I held that very near and dear to my heart. And since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be like my padrino and be a soldier. And I was lucky enough to have him in my life till I was about 22 years old. So with his mentorship, with his guidance, and just the compassion of him and and my madrina, Stella, I actually had a better chance because my mother was a teenager. My mother was still growing up. So in 5th grade, I was a pen pal during Desert Storm to a first lieutenant female. Her name was Corina Gonzalez, and I was her pen pal for her whole deployment. And by the end of her deployment, I could not wait to meet her. I couldn't wait. I was like, I'm going to be like her, right? It just further advanced my want and my, like, she's a Hispanic. Actually, she's Native American Hispanic, but she's here from New Mexico. And I was like, just super excited to be like her, right? To be like my padrino. So I enlisted at 17 because of my history with my mom, and her her sexual assault had a significant impact on her mental health. I actually went into foster care when I was 13. So at 17, I emancipated and joined the military. And from basic training, I loved it. I loved it. It was the structure, the discipline, and the family life I wanted. Basically, the family life that I craved, right? And I loved it. I loved every part of it. In basic training, I did really well. And my advanced school, I did really well. And then I came back home to my state because I had enlisted in the National Guard. And I had told my unit, I was like, I want to be full-time. I don't want to do this just 1 week in a month. So I would always volunteer for missions. When my unit went on like annual trainings, I would volunteer to be part of the advanced party so I could spend more time, on orders. I loved being in uniform. I loved everything about it. So I got a lot of opportunities that way because I was constantly volunteering for something. And I first started off in the military like Vanessa Guillen. I was a 92 Yankee, which is a supply specialist and an armorer. And so I worked in the arms room, and I worked in the supply room for my first couple of years in the military. And then from there, at the time I had just started college, and I was going to school for business communication and graphic design. And I loved doing that. And I also was doing photography. So I switched MOSs to the 123rd Public Affairs Detachment and became a photojournalist. And I did that for 2 years. And while on assignment, attached to the 64th Weapons of Mass Destruction Civil Support Team, the commander came up to me and he's like, "Hey, Padilla," because my last name was Padilla at the time, but he said it Padilla. "Padilla, would you want to be on our team? It's a full-time position. Would you want to be on our team?" And I was, this was right around 9/11. So absolutely, I was like, sign me up. So I transferred out of the pad and into the civil support team, where I spent the next 9 years as the only enlisted female in that unit. Wow. And I can honestly say that I worked with some incredible men. I had some phenomenal leadership, and I always brag about how awesome my leadership was. I mean, it wasn't perfect all the time, right? I mean, I'm sure I got on their nerves, and anything having to do with me was an inconvenience, I'm sure, because I was the only female. So, but my overall experience in that unit was, the opportunities that I had. In 2003, I was part of the Space Shuttle Columbia recovery mission and got to work alongside NASA, FEMA, the FBI, the CIA, the Environmental Protection Agency of Texas. So that was, and I was only 23 years old. And being on that unit opened up other opportunities for me in the Homeland Security Department. And in 2004, I actually was recruited to run operations on the southwest border of Mexico and New Mexico. So I ran the operations for the Department of Defense Innovative Readiness Training Program, which is an engineer construction program and project where we rotate units from different states, preparing them for war. Because on the southwest border of New Mexico, it's hotter than hell. So it's a desert-like climate, which is what soldiers need, or airmen, or service members need to prepare for. And it's a way to get service members acclimated, especially engineer units that are going to go do construction overseas. So I ran that program for a couple years, and then from there I went to the counter drug task force, which has been here in New Mexico for a very long time. They're still active, and it's a full-time force. It's Title 32 and some Title 10. So for the civilians watching, all that really means is you were on active duty. And I worked with the counter narcotics program for 9 years. So simultaneously with the 64 CST, a lot of people get that confused. They're like, "Well, I thought you were in the 64th." It's like, no, I did both concurrently at the same time. And there I was part of a national evaluation team that traveled around to different states and evaluated the substance abuse programs for each state. My last 4 years serving, I transferred to the 111th Brigade Sustainment Enhancement Brigade, and I was a senior chemical NCO, but I was also a platoon sergeant, a victim advocate. I was on the safety council, and I served. My full-time position was the substance abuse coordinator for the state of New Mexico. So I oversaw the drug testing program and substance abuse program for both the Air National Guard and the Army National Guard, which is about 4,000 soldiers and airmen. So that's in a nutshell. Wow. Everything that I did.
People don't understand, and civilians don't understand all that stuff means, especially in that National Guard, Reserve kind of, and then like you said, going on active duty, trying to get whatever it took you to be on active duty, and you made it the rank of E8, which is also another accomplishment. in that short period of time. So I never
Yes.
asked you. I looked in your bio too. So what is your ethnic group? I know they say Hispanic, but that's everything. What is your
I am Hispanic. I am of a Spanish descent. So my
Okay.
family originates from like Portugal, Spain area.
Okay, so
And
you're actually Spanish.
Yes, I'm actually Spanish, yes.
Yeah.
And my family is actually from northern New Mexico, which is, there's a lot of Native American in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've ever done one of those like ancestry reports
No,
or whatever.
no, I'll tell you
Well,
what
I was really curious because, I don't know my dad, so I'm like, well, I don't know. But my dad is, or I guess the person who helped produce me is of a Spanish descent as well. So I was just really curious to see like what am I made out of, So I did one of those, and I'm 40% Spanish, like Portugal, like from So like I guess a portion of me is Portuguese, which is really interesting, right? Yeah, it's really I never knew that, but for the most part, my family, my entire family is here from New Mexico, born and raised, or I should say homegrown. And but yes, there is some Native American in my family. So matter of fact, a lot of my uncles have very prominent Native American features, and some of my aunts as well.
One of the things, the reason we're here, this took a time, is because of Hispanic Heritage Month. Is that something that you actually celebrate yourself, observe personally? And now you say you had 3 daughters, and were they part of that when you were doing that, as far as the Hispanic Heritage Month?
I celebrate my Hispanic heritage every day. I'm very proud of my roots. I have spent my lifetime breaking generational patterns, generational trauma, generational, I guess, just changing the way things are, right? However, I still teach my kids, my daughters, about, where we came from. Everything from, we make homemade tortillas in my house. We have we cheat because we don't roll them. So, but hey, we're still cooking them homemade.
Right.
My kids know all of the traditional New Mexican dishes. I know here in New Mexico, we do have a little bit different style of eating from other states. You go to Texas and their chili compared to our chili, it's not the same thing. We're always in a battle with Colorado, because Colorado is like, well, we have the best chili, and New Mexico, I'm like, no, we do. We have Hatch, New Mexico, San Antonio, New Mexico, where red and green chili is grown, along with pinto beans, and that's part of our heritage. That's part of who we are. I grew up on meat and potatoes, right? So it's very important for me to pass those values on to my daughters, especially.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job of that. In fact, you're part of LULAC. Can you explain to us what the LULAC? What is your position in LULAC?
So I joined LULAC in September of last year. They were awesome. I reached out on Facebook because I was looking for support for my rally that you showed a clip of. Thank you for doing that. And I reached out and I said, hey, I need LULAC. I saw them in DC when I was in DC for the Vanessa Guillen March. And so I reached out to them, and they welcomed me with open arms. And they are the oldest the oldest and largest Hispanic civil rights organization in the U.S. They've been around for 92 years, and they're all about civil rights. So I joined the national committee. I was appointed in February as the chair for Subcommittee on Legislative Affairs, Military and Veterans Legislative Affairs. And since then, I've been working very aggressively on the Vanessa Guillen Act, which is now the Vanessa Guillen Military Justice Improvement and Increasing Prevention Act. It's super long now. I know it's super long now, but that's good, right? Because it's attached to the NDAA now, and it's incorporated with a whole bunch of other changes. So in addition to what we wanted, us meaning us veterans, I'm also working on the Brandon Act, which is a suicide prevention bill for active duty, which is currently right now we need more support in the House, in the Senate. The last one that I'll talk to you about is the Veteran Deportation and Prevention Increasing Act. Currently, we have over 200 veterans that are deported, which is really unfortunate. I always give an example of one specific one. Her name is Laura Mesa. And the reason why, it's not to show favoritism, it's just that I contact her on a weekly basis. I check on her, and she is an MST survivor. And she was actually discharged. Let me back up. She served in the military. She was deployed to, she is a combat veteran. Prior to her deployment overseas, she was raped, then deployed. So on top of her combat stress, she's also got, PTSD from her assault, which led to behavioral problems as expected. Tony, I don't know why people think that, when you're raped that you can just go on with your life. Like nothing changes. I don't understand that. And it's usually the people who have never experienced that are the ones that are saying, well, I don't know why she couldn't just move on. Well, if you were violated in the most dehumanizing way, you would probably have some mental health issues as well. So she got out of the military. She was discharged mainly because of her behavioral health or mental health, and then she was arrested for some marijuana issues, and served her time. And then when after she served her sentence, she was still deported. So she's 100% disabled veteran, deported to Costa Rica. And it's extremely absurd. And I always bring her up because, like I said, not to show favoritism at all, but just because I check on her. Matter of fact, I talked with her this morning. I'm always checking on her because one of the concerns is that she doesn't have access to mental health care in Costa Rica.
Right.
So there's that fear of relapse. And when you feel betrayed by not only your country, but by the people that you served with, that takes a significant impact on your mental health. But
so you and I kind of talked about that a while ago, 3 months ago, about trying to get some light on what's going on with some servicemen who served and are not being deported. Now, all of them like that, or all of them, because I get you, right, about the behavioral health part. You know how we keep changing it from in the military it's behavioral health, then all of a sudden in the civilian world it's mental health.
Right.
Because we punish behavior, right? We either reward or we punish behavior. So right. I get that. So you're saying that quite naturally, if you suffer from that kind of trauma, that you're going to have some coping problems and all that kind of stuff going on with that, trying to deal with that. So she got
Absolutely.
out. She got out, and then I guess she got into drugs. The drugs may have been part of the coping. Sometimes the drugs is the coping mechanism. Sometimes.
That's statistics have shown that 33% of individuals who experience, and the number is probably much higher because that sexual assaults are very underreported, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the number one thing that they do is they resort to drugs and alcohol. It's almost like it's the it's just the path that they go down. And I mean, even as expected, because even if you're referred to mental health, what does mental health do? They put you on prescription drugs, right? So what do these drugs do besides give you a plethora of side effects? suicidal ideation is one of the #1 side effects of antidepressants. So you give an already suicidal person a prescription for, I don't know, I'll just name one, Wellbutrin. One of the side effects, #1 side effects of Wellbutrin is suicidal ideation. So if you're already experiencing that, it's kind of like you're just adding more trauma onto the trauma. So you can't just fix these problems with, by throwing pills at veterans. And it's a big problem, especially the opioid crisis we have amongst our veteran community. It's absurd. And I'm super grateful for a lot of programs out there. Like I know Hunter 7 is constantly talking about it.
Hunter 7? Never heard. Okay, so
Hunter 7 Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're one. Yeah, they're just one of many. There's lots of organizations out there. Yeah, like there's organizations. Right, there's organizations like yours. I mean, there's a lot of veterans that are trying to help veterans.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I founded Veterans Counseling Veterans. I'm like, how can we expect others to take care of us if we're not going to take care of each other?
Right.
And then when the cameras are away, like with the assault that happened in Afghanistan, the news is gone, so they don't give a damn. But we do. So that's why veterans got to be there to take care of each other, because when the cameras are gone, the money's not there, then it's just us taking care of us. You're doing that right now, Crystal, and I really appreciate that part. And I want you to know that I want to support you as best I can for Veterans Council Veterans and what you're trying to do. Again, we're not. And I told you earlier, as we've stood up a women veterans mental health committee, but the committee is more designed to help with the mental health side of the house, not the advocate side. Like I'm not sure if we may be out there, but I'm not sure. I talked to some of my committee members. We're out there with the 40, whatever the. But we will be there for the mental health side as well. You can count on that. And we're going to have a military psychotrauma conference in June as well, and we'll definitely invite you for that. So I mean, you just sit there and within the last 30 minutes, you hit some stuff that we can just talk for hours on. I mean, single parent, your mom, unfortunately, oh my goodness, was raped at 14. That's crazy. And then, and now your children, now your 3 daughters, when did they come in the picture? Because were they before you went in the military or after you went in the military?
I was 22 years old when I gave birth to my daughter Jaden, she's now 19 and she's a freshman in college. Okay. I always tell people that, especially folks that don't understand the sacrifices that service members make. I'll give you an example. My daughter was 5 months old and I was still breastfeeding when I went on my first activation. And anytime for folks who don't understand like the way the National Guard works, right? The National Guard is there for state support. So if there's a hurricane, for example, Texas, Louisiana, they get, it's hurricane season. So every year there's tens of thousands of National Guard troops that are activated to report to state duty. And it's like you have 4 hours. I mean, the unit that I was part of, you had 4 hours to respond. So I taped up my chest because I was still breastfeeding and kissed my 5-month-old daughter goodbye. I was 22 years old. Wow. And off I went. I always thank my daughters for Veterans Day because to me, they're the heroes. They're the ones who have had to say goodbye to their mom. They're the ones who have had to, truck along on my military career. And even though the military is always saying family first, it's the mission first.
It is.
And we understand that as service members. We understand, we've made a commitment to our service and we just do it. We do it without hesitation, but we're also trained that way. We're trained that way. I tell folks that, especially who have loved ones that are in the military, the mental the mental and even physical stress that we go through in the military is it's strenuous. We're constantly doing 5 or 6 things at a time, right? I always tell people that I always felt like a one of those circus sideshows, the one with all the plates spinning.
Yes.
You know, because it was like you never just have one job, right? If I go work at Google as a software engineer, I sit there all day long and I'm a software engineer. But when you're in the military, you have additional duties, right? And those additional duties could be a whole nother job. It's a whole other job. So just the mental stress that we go through, the physical stress that we put our bodies through. You know, we're jumping out of airplanes with, 80 pounds on our back. And I told people, if you ever wonder what it's like to land, and I've never jumped out of an airplane, I was not airborne. I have a lot of respect for them, though. Is the way it was described to me is throw a 10-pound sack of potatoes off of a 1-story, and that's about how hard you land. So imagine being, like a 210-pound man. That's a lot of impact on your, when you land on your body. And then not to mention the 8-mile walk that you have to do right after you jump, right?
That's part of the work.
Yeah, and it's part of our job, and we do it. And all we really ask for is support. We're constantly asking for support, and as well as our families. I have so much respect for military families. I was the military member of my family. My husband was a civilian, so my marriage unfortunately did not survive, but because he even told me, he's like, you're never home. You're never here. And when you're here, you're not here.
Right.
And it was very true. I was very much married to my career. I really was. And I can say that now, right? I've been divorced for 11 years, so I can speak truth. Yeah, right. I can speak that truth now. But military families are the spouses, right? They hold down. I tell people they keep the fire burning at home while your loved one is out doing their job and serving their country, and they do everything. So I also just want to say thank you to all the military spouses out there for everything that you do, because you have to hold down the fort and just be there waiting for your loved one to get back and hope that they come back. Right. That's the other part.
And then they come back different.
Very much different.
You leave as mom and dad, come back as who is this person? And the thing is with Veterans Council Veteran is that because I'm a military brat myself, and then of course I was married when I was in the military, and I got divorced, like you said, it doesn't survive. And so I have a tremendous Veterans Council Veterans. We really want to focus on the family. This show is not about Veterans Council Veterans, but it's just, as you said before, the family is so important, but it's not addressed once you leave the military. I mean, you got all this stuff going on when you're active duty, whatever. It's all kind of support for your family. Everybody gets an ID card, everything. You get out, boom, support's gone. So so you're right. I mean, let's talk about now, since it's a Hispanic Heritage Month. And I just mentioned the statistic about 15% and all that kind of stuff. Did you when you were actually born here, so you didn't have any problem with the language or any of that kind of stuff. But anybody else that did you see a problem with the language, to understand the language, or how they were treated in the military as far as Hispanics?
I want to brag on my co-chair a little bit. My co-chair is Denisa James. She's actually a Mexican American, and she served her entire enlistment on a green card. And she had to learn English, I believe. Matter of fact, when I was at basic training, there were some women in my platoon that had just come from Lackland Air Force Base, and they had just learned English. Mm. And then they came. So there was still a little bit of a language barrier there. But I didn't experience that, so I can't say that. But I know that for individuals who enlist in the military that do talk a different language, they're some of our best linguists We have some of the best linguists in the world, and I'm grateful for them because I mean, look at our code talkers. I know we're stuck on Hispanics, but so the linguists. I mean, that's the importance of having them in the military, in addition to just the fact that they're amazing people and they volunteer to serve. But I never had a language barrier personally. But you did make a good point. Hispanics do make up a very large portion of the military service, and the Army or the Department of Defense relies very heavily on Latinos for their recruits.
Yep.
So that's why with everything that's going on now, we're really pushing for a safer military. That's really all it is. I tell people all the time, I don't come on here and I don't ever bash the military. I am very grateful for my military service. I had opportunities that I never would have had had I not gone into the military. And the fact that the Department of Defense relies very heavily on Latinos, and a lot of it is because, like, look where we come from, right? They go into low-income areas for recruits, and they promise you the world. Of course, like recruiters, right? It's like, what did your recruiter tell you? What lies did your recruiter tell you? But a lot of Hispanics come from, like, look at the family structure. Look at the family structures. And that's why they're very dedicated. They're very reliable. They're hardworking. Our Hispanic population is some hardworking individuals. A lot of our farm workers are of a Hispanic descent, and I don't think that there's enough appreciation for them, quite frankly. I mean, every time I go to the grocery store and I'm getting my fresh veggies, I seriously like take a minute to just be grateful, because my grandma used to grow all her vegetables and most of her food, but she had 14 kids.
You have known is there a statistic when it comes to I know the statistic for Hispanic women in the military? And in fact, Florida is now like number 2 women veterans population in the country. Florida is, and
yes,
Hispanics, I think certain areas they're the second largest as far as population. But have you know any statistics on Hispanic and military sexual trauma?
Not specifically to Hispanics, but I know that when it comes to sexual assaults in the military, just the fact that anybody is assaulted is an issue, right? I don't think they've broken it down, or maybe they have. I have not seen it.
I'm fighting for that, because so far I've talked to the VA and stuff, and because again, when you start looking at the MST, it's about credibility and all that kind of stuff. And you just mentioned about the language. So can you imagine if you don't have, you're not too well versed in the language, you come from lower socioeconomic status, and then you're trying to say to somebody sexually assaulted me, they may feel like I won't be believed, or you know what I mean.
Right.
You could see that it's harder. I mean, in certain cases.
Absolutely. I mean, as a minority, to be heard is very difficult. You feel like you're screaming at the top of your lungs and nobody hears you, right? Because you feel like nobody can see you.
Right.
I know for just my personal experience, that's how I felt. I felt very alone. I filed not a sexual assault complaint, but when I was a victim advocate, while advocating for someone, I felt like I wasn't taken seriously at all, and I wasn't. So it's not, I didn't feel that way. It's I wasn't. But I don't know that I can say that had anything to do with my, whether because I was Hispanic or because I was a woman. It's kind of like a double, right. A double-edged sword there. It's like you're Hispanic and you're a minority and a woman. Yeah,
the intersection that we're not. Now, have you heard people say, well, why are you bringing up race? Because that's divisive. We're all American.
We are not.
One uniform, why are we bringing this up?
No, matter of fact, on the national committee, we've got one of the committee members out of California. He works on the diversity and inclusion, and it is not fair. Look at you gave some statistics when we first came on. Are there a lot of high-ranking Latinos in the military? How many general officers do you know? I mean, there are some, right? And they're like unicorns.
Yeah.
Or they're in like these positions kind of like to show diversity. I mean, I only know what I know, and I'll tell you what. Sometimes they put, they'll put an African American in a position to show diversity, right? But they don't support that individual in their role. Same thing with Hispanics. You've got high-ranking, especially amongst the women. You very rarely see high-ranking female Latinas. It's like you hit E8 and you never go nowhere. It's like E9 is so far away.
There's a general named General Luis Faisal. He's a major general. He was in the reserves, and he wrote a dissertation was on that. He picked specifically Puerto Rican women in the National Guard, and how you don't see them as you get higher, they kind of like disappear. It has been recognized, and I'm just curious about that. This is Hispanic Heritage Month, and as we talk, like I said, there'll be some differences when it comes to, because the family is also part of the system. So if you want to have effective psychotherapy or counseling, you got to sometimes bring family in, like your mother, with your mother, what she experienced, and then of course you not experiencing, but experiencing the side effects of it, if you will. You need the family to sit there and be part of that treatment and understanding and stuff. So
right, and also it's important for because especially and I only speak for myself, okay? I don't want to speak on behalf of all the Hispanics out there, but we're very hard-headed individuals. We're very stubborn. So asking for help is difficult because we're like, I can do it. I can do it on my own. I can do it on my own. I was like that forever. I'm still kind of like that. But it's true. We don't want to ask for help because maybe we grew up where you didn't ask for help, you figured it out. Or maybe growing up, especially coming from like a impoverished situation. I mean, I came from a impoverished situation. I didn't ask for help because there was no help. It's kind of like we had to figure things out on our own. So we grow up with that mentality like, oh, I'm not going to ask for help. Because there's also asking for help is like a sign of weakness to some cultures.
Right.
And I know in my family, like my older uncles and aunts, they're very set in their ways, right? And they will not get therapy, especially maybe like age 60 and older. You don't even talk about therapy because you don't need therapy. You don't need therapy. Just go for a walk. Go for a walk or just shake it off. And when it comes to trauma, there is no shaking it off. Mm-hmm. Trauma is trauma. And until you work on it, until you deal with it, and if you don't deal with it, eventually it's going to deal with you. And that's why we have a high suicide rate. And that's why we have a high alcohol and substance abuse rate amongst the Hispanic communities. Because a lot of, especially men, they will not ask for help, right? Instead, they'll go to Total Wine and buy a 12-pack, right. Sit on the back porch and drink their worries away.
Drink it away.
And again, I don't speak for everybody. That's just my observations from the people around me is they drink their problems away, right? They drink it's like liquid therapy.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest therapies is liquid. And
right.
Not liquid like Kool-Aid, but liquid in the alcohol side.
Yeah, and that's very dangerous to mix with those prescription medications that you're given by the VA. Zoloft and vodka is not a good mix. I tell people that all the time. Like, you can't be on Zoloft and then go party every Friday night and get blazed out of your mind, because the two, they counteract each other, and it's just a cocktail for destruction.
And we talked about it earlier because we had like another 10 minutes. We talked about the Pentagon said that they're going to take it's going to take 6 years to completely implement the changes they want to do when it comes to military sexual trauma. What do you think about that? And what do you think the holdup is? Do you think six years is reasonable? And then and if not, then what do you think the holdup is?
All right, I'm going to say this, and a lot of people don't like it, but you know what? That's ridiculous. 6 years is way too long. 6 years is, I understand that, we're talking about 500,000 people. But what we're not talking about is the other 400,000 we're leaving behind in the National Guard. And then another 200,000 in the Marines, and then another 100,000 in the Coast Guard. So 6 years to only address 500,000 individuals, that's ridiculous. And I think that what they need to do is just start holding people accountable. I know that it's a lot of money to have a court-martial. I understand that's probably one of the reasons why they don't like having court-martials, because it costs a lot of money. However, you start messing with people's money and things change. You take away their pay, right? These the officers that are committing these sexual crimes, these sexual violence, take their pay. Not only is it an embarrassment to themselves and their family, but also everyone around them is going to be like, whoa, they're serious about this. Like, and you'll see the culture change. But until we start holding people accountable, we have spent billions of dollars in the last 10 years on the sexual assault prevention program. Okay, billions of dollars. And on top of that, we're about to spend millions more, right? But what are we not doing? We're not doing court-martials. We're not just dishonorably discharging people. They're giving them a slap on the hand and then reassigning them so that they can go quietly retire. That is some bullshit. That is some straight bullshit. And that is not okay. And until we start addressing those issues, we're going to continue to have these problems. And in 10 years, we're going to say, but we had a new program, or I'm sorry, 6 years from now, we're going to say, but we have this great new program. You can have all the great programs in the world, Tony. I mean, I think that the program we have now is actually pretty decent. However, when it comes to the prosecution process, the investigation process, it goes nowhere. And that's why we have these problems. And that's why we're going to continue to have these problems. So my fix-all is take their pay.
Now, we had also mentioned earlier about the National Guard taking so long.
Oh my God. The National Guard the National Guard is not included in that 6 years. The National Guard, the Coast Guard, the Air Guard, the reserves are not included in that 6-year plan. So I want to know, well, what about them? We all wear a uniform. I don't care if you wear a uniform 3 days a month or if you wear a uniform 31 days a month. You still wear a uniform. You still have made a commitment to your country. You have made a commitment to yourself. And you should have some basic civil rights, some human rights. Asking to go to work and not be raped as an occupational hazard, I don't think is too much to ask. But back to the National Guard. These changes do not affect the National Guard. And that's really one of the things that I'm pushing. When I'm in meetings, I'm constantly saying, oh, well, what about the National Guard? I'm like that annoying person in the meeting that's like, well, what about the National Guard? And then they say, oh, well, we haven't orchestrated anything for the National Guard yet. And it's like, you're failing people. It's our leadership failing, each other, because it's not just enlisted service members that need this protection. There are officers that get assaulted. Those ones are highly unreported because of the dehumanizing and the embarrassment, right? Like, oh, I'm a captain and I was raped. Like, it's embarrassing. So they don't report it. But yeah, to answer your question, 6 years, ridiculous.
Yeah, I just got a comment from Dr. Michael Perry. It's like he agrees what you're saying.
Agreed.
It's ridiculous.
Agreed, Dr. Perry.
I know I know him. He's retired Army. Him and his wife, and he agrees with you about it's just too it's just too long. And then we just said about the National Guard not being even when it's implemented, the National Guard is not part of it. So that's I don't understand sometimes. I don't understand. You're working as you're part of that legislative part with LULAC. That's like a headache by itself. So I don't know. You see, is there something that you think that we should focus on for the next 6 months that you think that that my listeners that we need to sit there and pay attention to?
Absolutely. The way that everybody wants to support the troops until it's time to support the troops. They want to give us USO concerts and they want to give us 30% off at Home Depot, except for on lumber, which is like really ridiculous. But they don't want to pick up the phone and call their congressperson and say, I really need you to support this bill on, on the suicide prevention bill for veterans, this burn pit bill for veterans. I mean, Jon Stewart started a whole TV show about supporting veterans that have been exposed to toxic chemicals. He started a whole show. We have to start a whole show. That's so the next 6 months, the best thing I can say, and where people can help, is get involved. Help us out. You want to support the troops? Write your congressperson and ask them to support the Brandon Act, the Veteran Deportation Reform and Prevention Act, the Vanessa Guillen Act. I mean, just the burn pit. I mean, there's lots of bills right now sitting, like the bill on the Hill. Remember Schoolhouse Rock?
Yes, sure did.
I'm just a bill.
I'm just a bill.
On Capitol Hill. I know. I have. You should play that for your folks one of these days, because I don't think they really understand. I know I didn't when I first got into this. I didn't even really understand the process. But that's how you can support veterans, and is getting involved, calling Congress, asking them to support these bills, and also, when you say thank you for your service, we really don't need that. I mean, I know I don't need it. I appreciate it, but how you can support me is just make sure that I have the health care that I need, the mental health care that I need. And you know what? And I'll continue to do whatever I can to serve my country, even after we're retired. You're retired. I'm pretty sure. Look what you're doing. You are still serving. I don't think we ever stop serving. We are dedicated individuals, right? We love our country, and not like love our country like some crazies. And I don't, and I probably shouldn't say that, because there's some people out there that love America, and you're like, oh, whoa.
That's another level, yeah.
That's another level. We love our country in a way of like, it's about respect. And that's another thing, is that I just really wish that folks would respect veterans and not just support veterans.
Yeah, and I just want to add with that, the House Veterans Committee, since their first thing it talked about was the what do you call them, extremists, whatever, in the military. And I'm like, man, we got so much more stuff we can be talking about because that's something you can't do much about. But the other stuff you can, about the deportation, the suicide, the long waiting lines, the burn pits, all the other stuff we could be talking about, but no, we're talking about that, which is like they're not hearing us. So I don't understand it, but I don't know if they hear us when we but you're up there, you're fighting the fight. You and those people there, Lucy Guido's out there, a lot of women veterans out there fighting a fight. So I'll try to help you as much as I can with Veterans Council of Veterans, but I'm not sure if I'll be out there with the sign.
It's okay. You know what? It's okay because even just what you're doing, helping us get the word out, is huge. There's a lot of us, and we're everywhere. Like you said, we got Lucy. She's in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
We've got Katie. I know you know Katie.
I had Katie on my show.
That's my sister, man.
Really?
Man, I told Katie I ride or die for her. I will do anything for her. She's amazing. She is my sister in arms for life, man. I mean, well, they all are. Denitza, got Denitza in Virginia.
Yep.
You've got Olivia. I mean, there's so many of us. There's a bunch of women in California. D. James. Yeah, well, Denitza. Yeah, D. James. You got Mark just asked about a website.
For you. Do you have a website?
So thebrandonAct.org is one. Repatriate Our Patriots is the veteran deportation organization that we work with, that LULAC works with. So, and I honestly don't know. I think it's just Repatriate Our Patriots. If you Google Repatriate Our Patriots, the deported veteran stuff will come up. If you Google the Brandon Act, and there's actually a link on there to sign a petition and also to contact your Congress member. And the Military Justice Improvement Act, the Vanessa Guillen Act, that same thing. You can just Google that and it pops right up. But that's how you can support these things. And Tony, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for your service. You're helping all of us that are out there in the streets. As Katie says it, we're out in the streets.
Yeah, she said, yeah. She said that too. I saw her last Thursday at Jacksonville at an event there. It's Katie. She's part of.
She's awesome.
Yeah,
all you guys
are superheroines, and I respect you, and keep fighting the fight. And of course, Veterans Council vet out there. I'll link you up with our committee, and then we'll see how it's ways we can complement each other. Because it's gonna take a village. It literally is gonna take everybody. LULAC.
It's going to take a country.
And it's going to take us all, and we got to learn that. And I think we can do it by ourselves. It's not going to work. So,
absolutely.
So I want to thank you very much for coming on, taking the time to be on here and talk about your issues, and then of course I know we said that it's Hispanic Heritage Month, but just like people I've talked to before, at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and when America is messed up, we all should care about it, regardless of their race, sex, or gender. So that's important here. So, all right, I take it. Let me do my last bit here, and we'll talk later on. And then I really appreciate you being here. I know you're on.
Thanks, Dr. Perry.
MST. Was it MS? What's that? What is that? What time are you on?
I'm on Mountain Time.
Mountain time. Yeah, Mountain. Sorry. So anyway, thank you, Crystal, for showing up, and I'll get you on there. So let me do my little ending here.
I appreciate the opportunity, Tony. Thank you.
Oh, well, I love you having you here. It's great having you here. So there we go. We just had a nice hour discussion with Master Sergeant retired Crystal Romero, who, as you've seen, she does a lot of things. She's out there grinding, taking care of veterans and themselves. And I want to know that she's not out there by herself. We all should let her know that she's not out here by herself. She's done a lot of things, great things for the women veterans and military sexual trauma. And we got to do the same thing. We need it, like she had mentioned before. A lot of people out there will say, "Hey, thank you for your service," and then that's it. We need everybody out there to fight this fight. We continue on as well. So now, we got another episode coming up. I wanted just to talk about it really quick. We got this coming up on it says 13th. Really, I changed it to 5th. It's gonna be on 15th. Sorry. We're gonna have Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Gomez. He worked for the Special Operations Branch, and his wife, Dr. Johanna Gomez. She's a licensed mental health counselor, got a PhD. You're going to see them talk about, it's going to be on Friday, I believe, on mental health. So that's what we're doing as we sit there and try to continue to support and observe the National Hispanic Heritage Month. We focus on veterans. I'm Tony Williams. your CEO and president for Veterans Council of Veterans. Got to go. Guess what? It's time for outro.